Our top focus as of now, the Taliban will implement a constitution from nearly 60 years ago, from the era of Mohammad Zahir Shah, who was the last king to rule the country. The announcement was made by the acting law minister, Abdul Hakim Shari, in a meeting with the Chinese ambassador. The constitution will be implemented in a way that it does not violate the Sharia law. Zahir Shah's 40-year rule in Afghanistan was a rare period of peace and stability. Under his rule, schools for girls were established. Women were also granted the right to vote during this period. This is not the first time that his constitution is being implemented. But it seems to be awkward as a fit with the views of the Taliban. Zahir Shah's constitution was also enacted in the first years of former President Hamid Karzai's rule. The current constitution of Afghanistan was then approved in 2004. It came after efforts by Afghan politicians and elders to create a common consensus through jirgas, or the traditional assembly of leaders across the country. It guarantees equal rights before the law and says that education is the right of every Afghan citizen, and mentions that only courts can give out punishments. Meanwhile, the newly appointed Taliban Chancellor of the Kabul University announced that women are now barred from teaching or studying there. In a tweet, he said that as long as a real Islamic environment is not provided for all, women will not be allowed to come to universities or to work. Earlier this month, the Taliban said that female students in Afghanistan can study at university level, but the announcement came with a caveat. The Taliban called for classes to be segregated and mandatory head coverings for all. And for more on this latest development, we are now being joined by our correspondent Anas Mallick from Kabul. Anas, thanks so much for joining us. Big developments coming in from Afghanistan. The Taliban say that they will implement a constitution from nearly 60 years ago, from the era of the last king to rule the country. What can you tell us about this?
Absolutely, Priyanka. You rightly mentioned the Taliban today have announced that they would be implementing a constitution in the country, a constitution that is almost 6 decades old. It was ratified in 1964 by the then King Zahir Shah, and that had been the Afghan constitution. But after the Taliban takeover in 96, it was briefly there for a smaller time period, and then it was replaced by the Sharia rule. It is pertinent to mention that when Hamid Karzai became the president for a shorter time period, for an interim time period, the same constitution that was ratified in 1964 was implemented in Afghanistan for a shorter time period, and then the current constitution was made or was formed and agreed upon. Now, this would come with the caveat, is the fact that the constitutions, those components which are not in line with Islamic Sharia, those will not be implemented. Now, that is something that has to be looked at, because the rule of King Zahir Shah back in the day, Afghanistan was looked at a country that was relatively much more progressive. The pictures that came out from historical times, the images that came out, and how it's written in the books as well. So therefore, the picture that came out after the implementation of Zahir Shah constitution that was ratified in 1964, that portrayed Afghanistan as entirely different, contrary to what it is today. Priyanka?
To hear of another big diplomatic appointment, the first secretary in the Afghan embassy in Islamabad. What can you tell us about the choice of appointment?
Well, yes, Amir Khan Muttaqi, the Taliban's foreign minister, has written a letter to the Pakistani embassy here in Kabul, to the Pakistani Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and to the local authorities. And they have said that they have replaced the first secretary at the Afghan embassy in Islamabad, and he's requested the Pakistani government to accept the nomination as well. In fact, a new Consul General too has been appointed in Peshawar, but it is yet to be known whether the Pakistani government will accept these nominations or not, because we're yet to see the Pakistani government coming forward or in fact even accepting the Islamic Emirate government. No country as yet has fully recognized the Taliban government as a legitimate government, so that would be a tricky ride out. Priyanka?
Anas Mallick, thank you for joining us from Kabul, and thank you for all those insights. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.